In this morning, local law enforcement confirmed a major investigative development. Detectives officially identified a primary person of interest in this ongoing case. The operational focus has completely shifted toward locating one very specific target vehicle. Investigators operate under the working theory that this missing car holds the crucial evidence. The vehicle is believed to contain the forensic data necessary to secure a formal indictment. Authorities currently withhold the exact make and license plate to prevent targeted evidence destruction. This strategic silence highlights the critical urgency surrounding the recovery of the suspect automobile. The central analytical question remains focused on the exact nature of this missing evidence. A modern vehicle functions as a sealed microenvironment that reliably traps biological and physical trace material. The interior cabin readily collects hair follicles, skin cells, and microscopic clothing fibers during any physical struggle. Investigators likely expect to find biological material that directly links the suspect to the disappearance. Even an automobile subjected to heavy chemical cleaning retains microscopic forensic data points indefinitely. Luminol testing can easily detect residual hemoglobin profiles absorbed deeply inside the trunk lining. The upholstery fabric and the floor mats often conceal microscopic drops of blood or biological transfer. The missing piece of evidence might actually designate the car as the primary geographical crime scene. The suspect currently leverages geographical mobility to conceal this massive piece of physical evidence from detectives. Hiding a registered motor vehicle requires sophisticated planning and access to private enclosed structures. The suspect cannot simply abandon the car at a public space without triggering automated license plate readers. Law enforcement agencies utilize a network system of highway cameras to scan for the flagged license plate. This digital dragnet forces the suspect to keep the vehicle completely off the public road system. Law enforcement must secure a search warrant based on probable cause before they can legally process the vehicle. We must evaluate the forensic parameters governing the ongoing search for this specific automobile. The recovery of the car will ultimately dictate the entire trajectory of the impending criminal prosecution. Navigating an active investigation demands strict adherence to verified data rather than unfounded online speculation. We rely entirely on established forensic facts and confirmed law enforcement reports for our structural analysis. You should subscribe to Evidence with John to receive immediate analytical updates on this active case. We will track the physical evidence continuously as detectives release new technical information to the public. To understand why this specific vehicle matters, we must establish the baseline disappearance timeline accurately. Nancy Guthrie was last seen visually on a Tuesday evening at exactly 7:40. Security cameras captured her walking toward the eastern perimeter of the local commercial district. Her measurable digital footprint ceased entirely within 20 minutes of that final visual confirmation. Cellular tower triangulation data indicates her mobile device powered down completely at 8:03. The abrupt termination of the cellular signal represents a deliberate disruption of her network connectivity. The device did not lose battery power gradually, but rather disconnected from the network instantaneously. The initial missing persons protocol activated the following morning after she missed a mandatory professional appointment. Law enforcement immediately executed a standard grid search covering a 2-mile operational radius around the district. Specialized canine units failed to track a continuous scent trail beyond the primary parking structure pavement. The sudden cessation of the biological scent trail strongly suggests she entered an enclosed vehicle immediately. Weather conditions that evening were optimal for scent tracking, which makes the abrupt stop highly significant. Financial monitoring systems demonstrate zero transaction activity on her registered banking accounts since the evening she vanished. Ground search operations exhausted the preliminary geographical target zones with completely negative physical results. The transition from a standard missing person case to a suspected criminal investigation occurred remarkably fast. Detectives categorized the disappearance as highly suspicious based purely on the rapid cessation of all digital activity. The total absence of physical evidence forced investigators to rely heavily on adjacent electronic surveillance grids. The surface timeline simply outlines an adult woman disappearing from a heavily monitored public commercial space. The lack of an immediate physical crime scene heavily limited the initial scope of the forensic processing. Investigators had no physical location to secure and no preliminary biological evidence to send to the laboratory, but A systematic review of the surrounding traffic cameras revealed a completely different investigative reality layer. The analytical data from the local intersections provides the exact sequence we need to examine next. The footage demonstrates exactly who was present in that commercial district during the critical 20-minute window. We are moving past the initial disappearance to analyze the secondary layer of crucial digital evidence. We must systematically scrutinize the telecommunications data generated precisely before the initial disappearance timeline. Cellular network logs indicate 3 distinct outgoing transmissions originating from the victim device. These specific digital handshakes targeted a single registered cellular node within a highly compressed time frame. The registered owner of that receiving device is the current primary person of interest. Detectives established this critical connection through an emergency subpoena executed upon the regional telecommunications provider. The exact timestamps of these digital transmissions align perfectly with her physical departure from her primary residence. The suspect formally stated to investigators that he occupied a completely different geographical sector during that window. His initial voluntary statement provided a specific residential address intended to function as an impenetrable alibi. Forensic analysts never rely on unverified human memory during an active missing persons investigation. Investigators strictly verify physical location through the municipal traffic monitoring infrastructure and automated toll readers. A methodical review of the intersection optical sensors near his declared alibi location revealed a complete absence. His officially registered vehicle never traversed the digitally monitored sectors surrounding his claimed residential position. The verified geographical data points fundamentally contradict his official timeline of events for that specific evening. Law enforcement analysts then expanded the digital surveillance perimeter to encompass the primary search zone. Optical sensors positioned along the main arterial route leading to the commercial district captured a different reality. A high-resolution image from an overhead automated gantry positively identified his specific license plate configuration. The encoded timestamp on this photographic capture places his vehicle exactly 3 blocks from the active search grid. This geographical proximity correlates perfectly with the exact 20-minute window of her sudden network disconnection. The mathematical probability of this specific vehicle occupying that precise geographical intersection by mere coincidence is statistically negligible. He deliberately placed himself directly inside the primary target zone during the suspected abduction phase. The analytical focus of the entire investigation immediately shifted from establishing a personal connection to locating his physical transportation. The vehicle itself rapidly transitioned from a standard mode of transit to the primary vessel of potential evidence. Understanding the subsequent suspect movements requires mapping the exact trajectory of that vehicle through the municipal grid. Overhead cameras tracked his subsequent departure from the commercial district utilizing a secondary arterial highway. His return route purposefully avoided the major intersections equipped with high-definition automated license plate readers. This specific navigation pattern suggests a conscious effort to minimize his ongoing digital footprint across the city limits. The suspect demonstrated a working knowledge of the municipal surveillance infrastructure during his rapid egress from the area. Investigators utilized secondary commercial security cameras from adjacent private businesses to stitch the complete operational timeline together. The compiled video evidence confirms the vehicle returned to a residential complex registered to a known familial associate. These digital breadcrumbs successfully guided the tactical teams directly to the physical location of the suspected crime scene. We are no longer dealing with a theoretical connection, but a verified geographical overlap between suspect and victim. Investigators rapidly mobilized a specialized tactical surveillance unit to secure the identified vehicle at the residential complex. The immediate physical retrieval of this potential evidence was paramount to advancing the entire criminal inquiry process. An unmarked patrol unit visually confirmed the target automobile parked in an unsecured exterior residential lot. Undercover officers established a covert visual perimeter and immediately requested the deployment of the Specialized Forensic Transport Division. Standard bureaucratic protocols required a signed judicial warrant before physically impounding the suspected rolling crime scene. This strict administrative requirement initiated a critical operational delay spanning several crucial hours of darkness. The tactical surveillance units maintain their static external perimeter while awaiting the necessary legal documentation from a municipal magistrate. You can analyze the profound operational frustration as crucial biological evidence remained unsecured in an open parking lot. The legal parameters governing search and seizure frequently create temporary advantages for suspects actively concealing physical evidence. The judicial signature finally arrived shortly after midnight, confirming the absolute legal authorization to seize the designated property. The specialized forensic retrieval team approached the specific parking coordinate to lock down the vehicle for secure transport. The target automobile was no longer occupying the visually confirmed parking space within the designated residential complex. The suspect had actively exploited the prolonged administrative delay to physically relocate the primary evidentiary vessel. A rapid secondary grid search of the immediate residential perimeter yielded entirely negative results for the targeted vehicle. The target had successfully breached the static surveillance perimeter without triggering detection by the undercover patrol units. Individuals possessing zero knowledge of a missing person case rarely relocate their transportation covertly under the cover of darkness. This specific evasive maneuver elevates the behavioral profile from merely suspicious to highly indicative of active evidence. Concealment. The failure to secure the vehicle immediately represents a massive procedural setback for the lead detectives on this case. The physical forensic data required to construct a definitive prosecution was effectively lost in the urban transit system. This specific operational error practically guarantees the suspect additional unmonitored time to chemically process the interior cabin. Finding a relocated vehicle within a sprawling metropolitan environment requires the rapid deployment of extensive municipal aviation. The active investigation now faces a massive geographical challenge instead of conducting a controlled forensic examination in a laboratory. We must rigorously analyze exactly what specific trace material the suspect is attempting to destroy inside that cabin. If you demand this level of objective forensic breakdown, please consider subscribing to Evidence with John right now. The entire architecture of this criminal case currently depends entirely on recovering a piece of machinery that simply vanished. We must ask what specific biological material terrifies this suspect enough to risk a secondary evidence tampering charge. The physical architecture of a modern automobile practically guarantees the retention of microscopic biological evidence. The interior cabin of a standard passenger vehicle functions as a highly efficient forensic trap. Upholstery fabrics operate as incredibly dense filters that absorb and retain trace cellular material instantaneously. Suspects frequently attempt to eradicate this biological transfer using commercial chemical bleaching agents and industrial vacuums. Forensic science operates on the fundamental principle that completely sanitizing a vehicle interior is physically impossible. The microscopic gaps between the central console and the passenger seat consistently harbor critical trace evidence. Forensic technicians utilize specialized oblique lighting to identify synthetic fibers transferred during any physical struggle. A single strand of hair containing an intact root follicle provides a complete genetic profile. The suspect currently possesses a false sense of security regarding his aggressive chemical cleaning efforts. Chemical reagents like luminol react violently with the iron isotopes present within human hemoglobin molecules. This specific chemical reaction produces a distinct luminescent signature even after multiple industrial bleaching applications. Biological fluids inevitably seep through the surface fabric directly into the polyurethane foam padding beneath. The steering wheel and the gear selector serve as permanent repositories for epithelial skin cells. The internal environmental control system continuously circulates and traps airborne particulates originating from passenger clothing. The Specialized Forensic Retrieval Division knows exactly which specific biological markers will secure a grand jury indictment. Detectives require only a microscopic fractional transfer of the victim to definitively establish physical proximity. The rear cargo compartment features specific carpet weaves designed for durability that simultaneously trap microscopic evidence. Investigators anticipate locating concentrated DNA profiles deep within the structural crevices of the trunk lining. The delayed impoundment protocol provided the suspect with a critical temporary logistical advantage regarding the vehicle. The entire criminal prosecution currently depends entirely upon placing this specific machine inside a sterile processing bay. law enforcement possesses the technological capability to dismantle the entire passenger cabin down to the steel chassis. Every square centimeter of the carpet padding will undergo rigorous spectrographic analysis upon successful retrieval. The fundamental problem lies in applying these advanced forensic techniques without possessing the physical vessel. Securing a conviction requires the investigators to overcome a massive geographical and logistical concealment hurdle. Hiding a massive piece of machinery within a modern metropolitan grid presents an extraordinary operational challenge. The municipal landscape features thousands of automated digital sensors specifically designed to track vehicular movement. A suspect cannot simply leave the designated target automobile in an open commercial parking facility. The integrated license plate reader network would flag the abandoned vehicle within a matter of hours. This geographical reality forces the suspect to utilize highly specific concealment strategies utilizing private enclosed structures. Investigators must analyze the regional topography to identify potential long-term storage or disposal locations. The surrounding county features several abandoned industrial sectors that offer significant visual coverage from aerial surveillance. Deep water reservoirs and dense forested perimeters present alternative disposal options that severely complicate recovery operations. Transporting the vehicle to these remote sectors requires navigating secondary, unmonitored routes under complete darkness. Aerial surveillance helicopters equipped with thermal imaging cannot penetrate the concrete roofs of private residential garages. The suspect demonstrated significant operational awareness by successfully navigating the vehicle out of the initial containment zone. This specific evasion tactic directly contradicts the seemingly reckless initial approach near the primary commercial district. We must simultaneously address a profound analytical void regarding the initial interaction between these two individuals. The forensic profile completely lacks a verified behavioral trigger connecting the alleged suspect to the victim. Digital telecommunications analysis reveals absolutely no prior communication history between their respective registered cellular devices. Financial investigators found zero overlapping transactions or shared institutional connections spanning the previous 10 years. This total lack of a documented relationship severely complicates the process of establishing a preliminary behavioral motive. Investigators cannot legally speculate regarding the psychological factors driving the accused during the initial abduction sequence. They must rely entirely on the chronological intersection of their geographical coordinates during that specific time frame. The suspect maintains a profound tactical advantage by keeping both the victim and the vehicle completely hidden. Local authorities recently authorized a massive expansion of the active search grid to include regional salvage facilities. You must engage with the subscription button to receive immediate technical updates when this critical search grid expands. We analyze these complex geographical complications to understand the precise operational parameters governing this active manhunt. The tactical focus recently shifted toward regional junkyards after analysts recognized a highly disturbing logistical pattern. Detectives realized that a specific environmental factor might have already permanently altered the trajectory of this investigation. The recent media briefing conducted by local authorities introduces a profound tactical anomaly into the active investigation. Standard operational protocol dictates absolute operational secrecy regarding targeted physical evidence during an active manhunt. Releasing the specific parameters of the search directly to the public domain appears entirely counterintuitive. The public declaration that investigators possess a name and require a specific vehicle alerts the suspect immediately. Many regional analysts quickly categorize this public broadcast as a catastrophic procedural failure by the lead detectives. They argue the media leak provides the alleged perpetrator with the exact time frame required to execute total evidence destruction. A suspect aware of an impending search warrant will logically prioritize the immediate chemical incineration of the target vehicle. This critical perspective dominates the current public discourse regarding the handling of this ongoing missing persons case. However, a secondary analytical framework suggests a completely different and highly coordinated federal strategy. Behavioral profiling units frequently employ a tactic known as an operational provocation during stalled investigations. This specific strategy involves weaponizing information to artificially induce panic within the primary target. The alleged suspect previously demonstrated sophisticated operational discipline by successfully concealing the vehicle within an unmonitored structure. A static automobile hidden inside a private garage remains legally inaccessible and completely invisible to the municipal surveillance grid. Law enforcement cannot secure a search warrant for a structure without a verified geographical address. The investigative team desperately needs the suspect to physically relocate the designated vehicle onto the public transit system. Broadcasting the search parameters forces the suspect to make an immediate and highly stressful logistical decision. He must calculate whether his current concealment location can withstand the expanded regional search grid. If the psychological pressure forces him to move the vehicle, he instantly exposes the asset to automated detection systems. Municipal highway network utilizes thousands of optical sensors capable of instantly flagging the targeted license plate configuration. The moment the tires touch a public intersection, the digital dragnet will immediately register the geographical coordinates. This high-risk law enforcement maneuver attempts to transform a static problem into a dynamic tactical interception. You should subscribe to Evidence with John and share this analysis if you believe this broadcast was a calculated trap. We must evaluate the statistical probability of a suspect successfully navigating a compromised vehicle through a saturated metropolitan area. The suspect knows every passing patrol unit possesses the specific criteria required to execute an immediate felony traffic stop. The psychological burden of operating a highly visible rolling crime scene frequently induces critical operational errors. He might choose to abandon the vehicle in a panic rather than attempting a complex long-distance relocation. An abandoned vehicle in a commercial sector rapidly attracts municipal parking enforcement, which leads directly to police impoundment. If the suspect opts for total vehicle destruction, the logistical requirements become exponentially more complicated.
I don't want to stand too close to that window.
A modern automobile requires accessing deep water reservoirs through highly monitored public boat launch facilities. Utilizing thermal combustion to destroy biological evidence generates a massive atmospheric signature visible to regional fire aviation units. The public broadcast effectively trapped the suspect within a rapidly shrinking perimeter of viable operational choices. The investigators essentially traded operational secrecy for the ability to dictate the physical movements of the alleged perpetrator. We must monitor the regional digital scanner traffic continuously to identify any sudden tactical deployments matching this vehicle profile. The success or failure of this psychological operation will ultimately define the entire trajectory of the criminal prosecution. This complex tactical maneuver brings us directly to the current verifiable reality of the active investigation. We must analyze the exact legal standing of the alleged suspect at this specific chronological marker. No formal custodial arrest warrants exist within the municipal judicial system as of this morning. The primary person of interest currently maintains complete freedom of movement within the regional jurisdiction. Law enforcement agencies cannot legally restrict his geographical mobility without presenting physical evidence to a presiding magistrate. The entire judicial process remains completely paralyzed pending the successful recovery of the targeted transportation asset. Detectives understand that presenting a circumstantial behavioral case without a primary crime scene guarantees an immediate legal dismissal. The district attorney requires undeniable forensic data points to secure a grand jury indictment for a violent felony. The current investigative resources are therefore entirely focused on executing broad geographical search parameters across the county. Municipal aviation units continue scanning the identified industrial sectors utilizing advanced spectral imaging equipment. These aerial platforms search for specific thermal signatures consistent with a recently concealed internal combustion engine. Marine recovery teams remain on standby to deploy specialized sonar arrays across the primary county water reservoirs. The active investigation relies heavily on the sudden influx of anonymous civilian reporting to bridge the current surveillance gaps. Citizens are actively monitoring secluded residential parking structures and abandoned commercial facilities for the missing vehicle. Every passing hour theoretically provides the suspect with additional opportunities to systematically degrade the retained biological markers. However, forensic science dictates that completely sanitizing a modern vehicle interior remains a physical impossibility. Synthetic fibers and microscopic chemical residues will remain permanently embedded within the structural framework of the passenger cabin. The impending resolution of this case will not rely upon a sudden theatrical confession from the accused. The final Judicial outcome depends entirely upon a meticulous compilation of microscopic data points extracted from that vehicle. The investigative timeline heavily favors the suspect regarding evidence degradation, but favors law enforcement regarding geographical containment. The alleged perpetrator faces an impossible logistical scenario requiring perfect execution under extreme psychological pressure. A single mistake in his evasion strategy will provide detectives with the necessary legal authorization to execute an arrest. The active manhunt operates strictly on verifiable data rather than public emotion or unverified online speculation. As long as the target vehicle remains undetected, the final analytical puzzle stays completely hidden in the darkness. But analyzing this specific law enforcement strategy teaches us a critical operational reality regarding active criminal investigations. Forensic data establishes a consistent behavioral pattern regarding post-incident evidence concealment. Criminal perpetrators frequently succeed in chemically sanitizing a stationary primary geographical location. They almost universally fail to eliminate microscopic biological transfer within their utilized mobile transportation. Managing a massive piece of mechanical machinery under extreme psychological distress inevitably produces critical operational errors. The sheer physical dimensions of a modern automobile prevent discrete disposal within a densely populated metropolitan grid. The human central nervous system actively degrades logical decision-making capabilities during periods of acute panic. A suspect desperately attempting to eradicate forensic markers will inevitably overlook the microscopic structural crevices. Industrial cleaning solutions simply push the biological material deeper into the polyurethane interior foam padding. We must also recognize the specific physical vulnerability associated with transporting a commercial passenger vehicle. Every public movement exposes the operator to thousands of municipal optical sensors and automated license plate readers. The psychological burden of driving a mobile crime scene frequently forces the suspect into irrational geographical choices. They might select a poorly secured residential facility simply out of sheer geographical desperation. Analyzing these documented behavioral patterns helps investigators predict the most probable concealment locations within county. We utilize established criminal psychology metrics to anticipate the next tactical movement of the alleged suspect. Statistical models indicate a high probability of secondary evidence tampering as the regional search perimeter tightens. The suspect faces an agonizing logistical dilemma regarding the long-term storage of this compromised vehicle. Maintaining the vehicle inside a static enclosure requires ongoing access to a secure, private residential facility. Investigators currently analyze historical municipal zoning maps to identify abandoned industrial warehouses possessing enclosed parking bays. They also cross-reference property records to identify secondary real estate holdings associated with the suspect. These specialized data points allow the tactical teams to systematically eliminate potential geographical concealment zones. Attempting a long-distance geographical relocation exponentially increases the mathematical probability of a routine traffic interception. Law enforcement relies precisely on this exact psychological pressure to force a fatal operational mistake. The architecture of a successful prosecution depends on understanding these specific stress-induced behavioral vulnerabilities. You must understand that empirical data dictates the trajectory of every professional missing persons investigation.
But
At Evidence with John, we strictly follow the verified physical evidence rather than unconfirmed internet rumors. The entire architecture of this investigation continuously circles back to our initial analytical question. What specific microscopic evidence currently resides inside the interior cabin of that missing automobile? The target vehicle remains physically located somewhere within the boundaries of this specific metropolitan jurisdiction. That crucial piece of mechanical machinery could occupy a parking structure immediately adjacent to your current residence. It might sit abandoned under a specialized industrial tarp in a nearby commercial salvage facility. The suspect cannot permanently erase a multi-ton object from the physical reality of this county. The local community must remain constantly vigilant regarding unknown vehicles parked in their immediate residential vicinity.
right here,
A simple visual confirmation of an abandoned automobile could instantly trigger a massive law enforcement mobilization. You possess the observational capability to potentially locate the single most important asset in this investigation. The moment municipal authorities locate this specific vehicle, we will receive a massive influx of forensic data. I will provide a comprehensive technical breakdown of every biological marker extracted from that passenger cabin. You need to subscribe to Evidence with John and activate notifications to receive that immediate analytical update. The specialized forensic retrieval teams remain fully equipped and prepared for immediate regional deployment. They simply require the correct geographical coordinates to secure the necessary search warrants and begin processing. The district attorney requires the physical confirmation of that vehicle to proceed with any formal indictments. Nancy Guthrie remains completely disconnected from her family and her established digital footprint. The municipal digital dragnet continues scanning thousands of vehicles across the highway infrastructure every single hour. The missing piece of forensic evidence remains deliberately hidden somewhere in the urban darkness, and the operational clock is still ticking.